And with that, we're now 5 minutes past the hour. I believe we have a good number of individuals who have joined us. So let me just say once again, thank you and welcome, welcome, welcome to the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture's fiscal year 2022 webinar on the RFA for the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program. We thank each and every one of you for joining us and for your interest in the program. And we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm actually going to share a quick icebreaker with you all, just to kind of break the ice. We want you all to feel at home here and feel welcome, so that we can kind of get a feel of who's in the room and what some of the expectations are. So if you will please just give me a moment as I pull up the icebreaker. And please let me know if you can see my screen. If you can just put a quick message in the chat or come off mute. Can you all see my screen? Awesome. So if you all could please go to www.menti.com and you'll see the information up here in the top corner, or excuse me, right the direct top of the screen, and they'll give you an information code to put in as well. And we want to go ahead and get started off with the first question, and it says, please share your name, the state that you're coming from, and the organization that you're with today, so we can get a feel for who's in the room. And while you all are putting together your slides, I want to share that I'm Ryan Cornegay. I am a program specialist with the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, coming to you all today from Florida. And I'm so excited to be with you all today and share some about the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program. Awesome, awesome. I see Indiana, boiler up. I see we have, hopefully we have some Boilermakers in the room. Okay, Nevada, New England. All right, see Connecticut, all right. DC, California, Michigan, awesome. West Virginia. Then we have a cross-country attendees here today. That's awesome. Montana, New York, awesome. See who's in here, awesome. Arkansas. I love it, I love it. All right, just to keep you in time, I'm gonna go to our next question here. The next question is, what brings you to this webinar and what are you looking to get out of joining us today? So are you here because you're interested in agriculture? Are you here to learn more about the FASLP program? What's your passion? What drew you here today? And what are you looking to leave here with? About the program, awesome. Awesome. Okay. Working on the FASLP program, looking for grants that might fit into your programming, supporting you through service learning opportunities. Awesome. I love it. Urban and community agriculture focus. Awesome. Yes. Definitely, this grant definitely aligns with a lot with what you all are doing. I love to see what you all are sharing. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I really want to say thank you, each and every one of you, for participating in this quick icebreaker activity. Hopefully you see that multiple people are probably here for some of the same things. And I want to ask one last question before we start. If you could just raise your virtual hand, if you will. How many of you all are just hearing about the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program, or this is the first year that you may have found interest in the program and you're just kind of figuring things out? By show of hands? Okay. Awesome, awesome. Well, we welcome you to the, and if you may hear us call it FASLP, that's the acronym that we use, but we welcome you to the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program, and we hope that you find some great information in our RFA and in this webinar today that will be useful for you all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our National Program Leader, Dr. Lisa Jahns, to start us off today. Thank you all.
Excuse me, couldn't figure out my mute button. Ryan, thank you so much for kicking us off with that great icebreaker. And just to give you some logistics here, the webinar will be recorded, so please be sure your microphone's on mute. Here's the tech support number for Zoom, and you may type questions in the chat box, and hopefully we'll have time to get back to them later at the end of the presentation. If not, please reach out to Ryan or I with your questions. And the slides and the recording from this conference will be posted to the link below, the program page for the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program. So I'm going to start out with USDA's non-discrimination statement, and I'm going to read the first paragraph to you and then summarize the second two paragraphs. So to begin, in accordance with federal civil rights law and U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, civil rights regulations and policies, the USDA, its agencies, offices, and employees, and institutions participating in or administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, gender identity, including gender expression, sexual orientation, disability, age, marital status, family or parental status, income derived from a public assistance program, political beliefs, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity in any program or activity conducted or funded by USDA. And not all bases apply to all programs. Remedies and complaint filing deadlines vary by program or incident. However, Americans with disabilities who wish to have alternative means of communications for program information may contact the phone numbers below. And additionally, program information may be available in languages other than English. To file a program discrimination complaint, if you wish to, please reach out to the numbers below. We have a link to how to file a program discrimination complaint. And here are phone numbers and emails and hard copy addresses for you to reach out to. And USDA is an equal opportunity provider, employer, and lender. So you've already met Ryan, and I am Lisa Jahns. I'm the National Program Leader in the Institute of Food Safety and Nutrition. And here's my contact information. Email is probably a better way to reach me, but you can certainly call me. And Ryan Cornegi is the program specialist associated with this program. He's also in the Institute of Food Safety and Nutrition, and he will be tag teaming this presentation with me. So some of the topics that we'll cover today, I'll give you a brief overview of NIFA and an overview of the program, then the request for application details, the proposal evaluation process, very important, and then we'll talk about some additional information and resources for you. So first of all, the NIFA overview. NIFA is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and we're the extramural science funding agency within USDA's Research, Education, and Economics mission area. NIFA invests in and supports initiatives that ensure the long-term viability of agriculture, and NIFA provides funding and strategic leadership for programs that ensure groundbreaking discoveries in agriculture-related sciences and technologies to reach the people who can put them into practice, which is you. And so we thank you again for joining us. Some of the topics covered by NIFA programs cover agriculture broadly. We have animal and plant divisions, business and economics, education, environment, including climate change, farming and ranching, especially in rural areas, food science, food quality and safety. In the nutrition field, we look at nutrition, obesity, and overall wellness. We have human sciences divisions of community vitality and family well-being and youth. We have an international component and natural resources. So that's NIFA. And now Ryan will come in and give you the overview of this program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jahns. So first, I'd like to start off by sharing some of the priorities and the purpose of the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program. And Dr. Jahns, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. So the primary purpose of the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program, FASLP, if you will, is to increase the knowledge of agriculture and improve the nutritional health of children. So ultimately, we want to be able to embed more of our service learning projects and help the nutrition education as well as the knowledge of agriculture within our communities. The primary goal is to increase the capacity for food, garden, and nutrition education within host organizations who are engaging with communities and with schools and their cafeterias, and also within the classroom as we try to booster and help better facilitate our farm to school programs. It's also used to foster higher levels of community engagement and to support the expansion of the national services and volunteer opportunities as well. Next slide, please. So some of the other purpose and priorities of the program are to complement and build on the efforts of the Farm to School program, as I shared before, which is a part of the National School Lunch Act. Also, the FASLP program is used to complement some of the efforts by the USDA and school and food authorities to help implement lunch programs that are established together, and as well as the school breakfast program. So to better enhance what's going on in our lunches, to be able to engage and help students understand where their school lunches are coming from and where their food comes from, this program is initiated to try to help better engage students in that process of the food system. So throughout here, the purpose and priorities is also to help carry out activities that advance the nutritional health of those students and helping them to understand how that can be embedded in their education and engage in their schools and help them to better connect with farmers in their communities. So we also want to make sure that as we are engaging students in the classroom, that they can better understand where their food comes from and how that's connected to their community. Next slide, please. So to also help you understand a little bit more about the program, there are different, for some of our, if you're familiar with some of our NIFA programs, there are different project types. Thankfully for this program, there's only one project type, and that's standard. And so when you get ready to do your application, you will be doing a standard grant for the program. So this will be a standard application. Next slide, please. Dr. Jahns, could you go back 2 slides really quick? I'm sorry. And for our eligibility, so the different entities that are eligible to apply for the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program are state agricultural experiment stations, colleges and universities, university research foundations, other research institutions and organizations, federal agencies, national laboratories, private organizations, nonprofit organizations, foundations or corporations, individuals, or any group of 2 or more of these entities that are described here. And the eligibility for this program is really based primarily on who the primary applicant is. And so if you're collaborating and one of the individuals that you're collaborating with is not a part of that for said group, as long as the main applicant is one of these eligible applicants, then you should be fine with your application. Next slide, please. So project and grant type descriptions. And so applicants should request a budget that is based directly with their proposed budget. And so no single food and agricultural service learning program award can exceed over $225,000. And that's including indirect costs. And we ask that you please always refer back to the RFA, because the RFA is going to hold all of this information at all times. And so if you ever have a quick question or wondering about that, all of that information is directly in the RFA, and you'll see here on this slide where exactly you can find it. But this is also to help you understand that this $225,000 is to cover a 2-year time period. And we also would like to let you know that to make sure that in the process of putting together your applications, to please make sure that your budgets are directly aligned with that number. So no higher than $225,000, because unfortunately for any applications that we receive that exceeds that budget, we will not be able to review them to be able to basically put you into the competitive pot. So please make sure that your applications and your budgets are directly aligned with the award amount that we have shared here and in the RFA. A project may be supported by only one grant under this program. And so we are asking for one applicant to apply for this program for one project. So if for instance, if you may be at a university who might be wanting to apply for the same program, they can't be for the same project. So make sure they're for different separate projects, if you will. All FASLP awards will be made based on the relevance and merit of the proposed project itself. So based on the merit of the application and the information that is addressed there as it relates to how you hit all the dots that are in the RFA, please make sure that all of what you're putting into your application aligns with what we're sharing in the RFA. Next slide, please. And so just to give you a little bit of understanding of some of the activities that are funded, so proposals may include the following activities, but you can definitely expand out however you see fit to fit your program, your project in your area. So expanding the farm to school program beyond lunch to bringing in local or regional food products into the school lunch or school breakfast program is one activity that is very highly supported. Establishing new or strengthening existing community partnerships, for example, working with personnel to identify appropriate suppliers, that is also supported. Encouraging increased consumption of fruits and vegetables through promotional activities, taste tests, other activities, and engagement with students, that is supported as well. And then also developing and evaluating integrated curriculum to help reinforce the food and nutrition-based learning that you're engaging students in within the school environment. So all of these activities are supported under the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program. So if you find yourself asking, if you have an idea and it fits under any of these dots, yes, it does, but it doesn't stop there. Even if you go further in what you're putting into your proposal, there are other activities that are supported as well. But at this, I ask that you please always refer back to our RFA to make sure that it applies directly to the program. The RFA will always guide you and help give you the best answer possible. Next slide, please. The great thing about the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program is that there is no matching required. So if you are familiar with any NIFA programs, there are oftentimes matching requirements for the program, but thankfully for this program, there are not any matching requirements. And so what you apply for is totally fine. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Jahns to give us the application details.
All right, thank you, Ryan. That was a wonderful overview. Okay, so now the nitty-gritty, the application details. So the RFA is the document that's going to guide you. It's got all the information in it that you need to write a competitive application. And the RFA is available at this web address. The application deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern Time, January 31st, that's this January, 2022. and it must be submitted through grants.gov, which is the portal by which NIFA receives its proposals. Now, I want to encourage you strongly to not wait until the last minute to submit, and here's why. If that application comes through at 5:01 Eastern Time, it breaks our heart, but we have to reject it because we have to have this as a fair and equitable process to everybody. So things may happen. You may submit and then realize that you've forgotten an important document, or I'll review this coming up, but all documents must be in PDF format. So if they are in a Word document, NIFA cannot review them. And if it's a critical document, we will not be able to review your proposal. So if you submit early and you see something that you've missed or that you'd like to change, you can resubmit up until 5 p.m. Eastern Time on January 31st. And NIFA will take, when Ryan and I go through and review, we will take the last project that you submitted. So you cannot resubmit after 5 p.m., but if you resubmit beforehand, if you can get it in a few days before, that's very helpful as well, because oftentimes there are things that go wrong with the programs, or grants.gov does a pretty good job, but you never know. So please don't wait until the last minute. But, as Ryan reviewed, the total funding available in FY22 is approximately $2 million. The program code is FASLP, FASLP. And as Ryan mentioned, the maximum funding per award is $225,000. So we anticipate making about 9 grants out of this competitive RFA. So application details. The project narrative page limit is 10 pages of text and 5 pages of tables and figures, which will be strictly enforced. Any application that has a project narrative that exceeds the page limit will not be reviewed. So the font should be 12 point, no smaller than 11 points with your tables and figures in Times New Roman, and includes the text, figures, and tables. And within those 15 pages of project narrative, please ensure all components are available as described in Part 4 of the application and submission section of the RFA. And again, applications exceeding the page limitations will be returned and we cannot review them. So I'd like to highlight a couple of documents that we often get questions about. The first is a data management plan. And the investigators must provide a detailed business and management plan, including the expected data type, data format, data storage and preservation, data sharing, protection, and public access, and roles and responsibilities of those involved in data collection and sharing. Now, this sounds very researchy, which it is, but we encourage you to think outside the box a little bit. The types of data that you might be reporting are amounts of food that you've distributed, children that you've reached, schools that you've reached, things like that, numbers that show your data that you're collecting. And then here is a resource link to data management plans and some examples in there. And these links are also found in the RFA. Another document is the logic model, and this is a conceptual tool for planning and evaluation. And it displays the sequence of actions that describe what the program is and will do. And a program logic model is used by NIFA, is visually represented as a graphic diagram to use boxes, texts, and links, describing how the program is expected to work, what it's expected to do, with what results, and under which conditions. To review a generic logic model for NIFA reporting, see this generic logic model found at the link. And program logic models may be depicted in a wide variety of different forms. They do not need to be linear because not all projects are. So NIFA uses the logic models for 4 primary purposes: planning, management, accountability, and evaluability assessment. So a logic model clarifies the linkages between investments and activities, outputs and expected outcomes of the policy, program, or initiative. It communicates externally about the rationale, activities, and expected results of the policy, program, or initiative that you are developing, and tests whether the program makes sense from a logical perspective, and provides the fundamental framework on which performance measurements and evaluation strategies are based. So reporting what would constitute success for your program. Okay, so submission. NIFA only accepts electronic submission of applications. And there is a comprehensive NIFA grants.gov application guide. Grants.gov is not a NIFA program, so we do not have a lot of pull as far as helping you through it, but this guide is very helpful. And again, application documents must be in PDF format to be accepted by NIFA, and that's including your narrative and budget justifications. And grants.gov may allow other formats, but NIFA does not. And don't use third-party PDF fillers, use Adobe Acrobat. So what's the evaluation process once you submit your proposal? NIFA convenes panels of experts who will review your applications. So we put together groups. We work with a panel manager who puts together a group of your peers, and then proposals are assigned for review to at least 3 reviewers with expertise in the proposed project. Now, these reviewers will each write an individual review of your proposal, and so they'll have kind of an overview and their thoughts on the proposal, and then an identification of strengths and weaknesses. So keep that in mind as you're writing your application. These written reviews are used to begin discussions with the whole group, with other reviewers serving on the peer review panel. So what happens is the primary reviewer will give an overview of your project, including their strengths and limitations. And the other reviewers will come in and give their evaluation as well. Then the panel is opened up to discussion, and anyone can have input into your evaluation. And then through these discussions, the panelists come to consensus on the final rating and ranking of proposals. So this ranking is a 2-step process. First, while the proposals are being reviewed, they're ranked in order. And then on the last day of the panel, there's a re-ranking process where the panel really gets into the nitty-gritty of where the proposals fall in the ranking. Okay, so the evaluation criteria. All portions of the RFA are important, but I like to highlight the evaluation criteria as these are the directions given to reviewers to look for when they evaluate proposals. So you may wish to tailor your application to ensure that you make it easy for reviewers to find the information you are providing to them. This criteria is in 2 forms: the applicant requirements and the proposal requirements. So when reading the applicant requirements, please pay attention to the ands and the ors in the criteria and make sure that your proposal highlights your strengths and competencies to complete your proposed project. And one thing to keep in mind is that FASLP project planning should include the community members you will be serving. So again, for applicant requirements, please read page 18, bullets 1 through 7 carefully. Don't forget to include no fewer than 3 letters of support, your logic model, and your data management plan. And read page 18 to 19 for the evaluation of proposal requirements. And What they'll be looking for is how well the proposed project assists applicants, eligible entities, and others in achieving at least one of the primary goals of FASLP, which Ryan reviewed earlier, and they're located in a couple places in the RFA. Also, do note that there is a section on sustainabilities. The reviewers will be looking to see how this one-time infusion of funds can be sustained by the community. The timeline of these competitive programs, for over 1 to 2 months, the RFA is released. This application was released in mid-December, and there are 45 days for proposal writing and planning, and then the proposals are due. It'll spend 2 to 3 months under peer review and to get proposal funding notifications, and then awards are finalized and made 1 to 2 months after that. So on average, a competitive program takes about 3 to 5 months from the proposal due date to an award being made to an institution. And we'll keep you updated as much as possible, and we appreciate your patience. Okay, Ryan, would you like to take over with some additional information for us?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Jahns. So just to, if you go to the next slide for me, Dr. Jahns. So what I'd like to share with you all, one of the things that I saw that a number of you came here today to find information on was information on previous projects and what previous projects did. And so I'd like to share with you all one of our systems here at NIFA that we call CRIS. And if you are familiar with our CRIS system, is what we use to basically share what we are doing and what projects NIFA is funding. And so the public can at any time go to our CRIS program on the NIFA website and basically go in and look up any applications or any previously funded projects or currently funded projects. And so what I'm going to share here right in the box here is in our chat box is a link to the previously funded food and agriculture service learning projects. You can actually also find this on our food and agriculture service learning program page on the NIFA website. But this will basically take you to all the previously funded projects and what they're doing. And they also have specific periodic updates that they'll share on the progress of their projects. And so please feel free to use this as a tool to look at different things that other projects are doing and what they've been doing over time and over the process of the life of their awards. Next slide, please, Dr. Jahns. And just to kind of share some upcoming events and information, our NIFA events calendar is very useful to keep track of these deadlines. And so as Dr. Jahns shared, January 31st is the deadline for this project. However, there are a number of other NIFA programs that are actually going to be going out over the next few months. And so if you are interested or have already shown your interest in those programs, please make sure that you utilize the NIFA calendar to be able to find that information. And then also upcoming requests for applications we have a calendar for that as well to find out information on programs that are about to basically come out with their RFA. And I'll be sharing that information here in the chat also. And then just to give you a few other resources, and these resources can also be found in our RFA and on some of our program pages. I'll be sharing here also information on funding opportunities, the flow chart for our competitive grants, NIFA grant resources that can help you throughout the process of putting together your proposal or your application, NIFA policy guide, information on indirect costs for preparing and also information on awarded grants. And so I'll be sharing this here in the chat. And next slide, Dr. Jahns. And that will end our presentation here today. I know that we have a number of questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of read those off. And Dr. Jahns, if you kind of will help me answer these questions. And if you would like to come off mute after we finish these 4 or 5 questions, we welcome you to come off mute and engage with us and ask whatever questions you might have. So give me 1 second as I post this last piece of information in the chat, and then we will go into our questions.
Ryan, would you mind reading off the questions for me?
Yes, ma'am. I have them noted here, so I'm going to read them off for you.
Super.
So our first question is, if our grant period is 2 years, should we present a budget for a single grant period or for 2 budget periods?
That's a really good question. I believe that what you do is you do a year 1 and a year 2 budget, and then an overall budget.
Thank you, Dr. Jahns. The next question is, I'd like clarification on the project start date. In the RFA, I believe in the RFA, it states that the project needs to start before September 30th, 2022. Does that mean starting on September 30th, 2022 is okay? And what is the earliest project start date?
Another good question. The funding will not be released until the end of September, I believe. And we try to get it out earlier, but sometimes it bumps up against that time. So projects can begin after that period. You will specify that in your request in the grant. And there is also an eligibility to, if you need an extra year, make a no cost extension, what we call. So there is no funds involved, but you do have an extra time to complete your project. And so does that answer your question?
Can I follow up with that?
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. And this is great information. Thank you for having this webinar. So, and I think Beatrice just beat me to that. So I guess in the RFA, my understanding was it had to begin before September 30th. But you're saying it needs to begin, it can begin no earlier than September 30th?
No, it can, there's kind of a complicated thing that our budget department does. If you are recommended for an award, you may start before the award is actually made, but once the awards are recommended, they have to go through our awards management division, and they will work with you with any questions that they have about your budget. And so you can actually start the project after recommendation, but before the award is made, up to, I believe it's 60 days beforehand, but with the understanding that worst case scenario, and I've never seen this happen, if something comes about with AMD and you don't receive the funding, then we would not, that would be kind of at your risk. So you can begin earlier, but it's probably safer to begin after the funding is made.
And I'd like to also add to that real quick too, Dr. Jahns, just so you all might have a little bit more understanding. As Dr. Jahns said, if you're recommended for awards, that will go to our awards management division. There is a time period that sometimes depends on the paperwork that you're able to return to us. And there's also a time period that we have to make sure that we satisfy all things for your application. And so there isn't an immediate from you being awarded to getting your award money, but there's also a process afterwards that you will have to go through. So that the time that you're able to start will depend on partially how fast you're able to get your paperwork back to us and how fast that process is going to go. So that really ranges at that time period. But the 9/30/22 is to actually try to make it start before the beginning of the next fiscal year. And so that's what we're getting at with that 9/30/22.
Thank you, Ryan.
No problem. Our next question is, what are the requirements around a business and sustainability plan, and is there a sample plan to review?
There is a I'm looking at the RFA, guys. You are not required to have a business plan per se, but documents of evidence. So you may not exceed 5 pages on your sustainability plan, but it will be included as an appendix, so it's not part of the project narrative. And so this will be included as what we call an other attachment. And projects should provide evidence, so a market analysis or the outline of a business plan to show that it's likely to become self-sustaining. We do not have a graphic for the self-sustainability project for the business plan, but it's very flexible to fit your needs. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered that one, Dr. Jahns.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
All right. Our next question is, if requesting funding for 2 years, does the $225,000 need to be evenly split over the 2 years?
No, it does not. We understand that there's a startup process. So no, that does not need to be split evenly.
Our next question here that we have, Dr. Jahns, is, one second, let me make sure I have the right one. Does the data management plan count towards the 15-page limit?
Once again, I'm referring to the RFA. The data management plan is another attachment as well, so it does not count towards the 15 pages.
And our next question is, they share that they see that the requirement within the projects must involve underserved, rural, or urban communities. If our organization serves those in poverty in a suburban area, are we not eligible for funding?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, one of the important things to demonstrate with this proposal is the need in the community. So yes, you would be eligible, but you need to demonstrate the need for this program in the community. And actually for any applicant, reviewers like to see the so what, the why this program needs to happen in this particular community. So that can take the form of statistics around hunger or anything like that, that can help the reviewers to see the potential impact of your project. And anyone step in if I'm not answering your question well.
Our next question is there a definition of underserved?
That's an excellent question, and Ryan and I are actually looking into that. We do not currently have a definition of underserved.
And just to kind of go a little bit further with that as well, this is a definition that, while Dr. Jahns and I could give you a direct definition on what we know it to mean, we want to make sure that we have the direct definition from our legal background as well, from the USDA. So we want to share that with you there. But I will share with you the definition of socially disadvantaged, which is often used interchangeably with our underserved communities in our grants programs. So I'm going to share that here in the chat box, to a link to that language, and please feel free to use that also as a potential guide. But we will be following up with further information about that.
Thank you, Ryan.
No problem. The next question is, and I think we've already answered this one, was to clarify clarifying that grants can't begin until September 30th. I think we've clarified that question. If we haven't, please let us know and we'll come back to that. The next question is, are funds awarded all at one time, or do we need to invoice?
The funds become yours when they are awarded. And what you do is you will then invoice back to the award. Does that help? So yes, you will be invoicing, but you will have access to the full amount at the beginning.
And the next question is, does a small beginning farmer have a chance?
That's a good question. And I'm going to refer you back to the RFA's evaluation criteria. We can't speak to what the panel will decide, but if you go through and see that you're meeting the priorities of the FASLP, then that would allow you to create a competitive application. So you can find out if it's the right fit for you.
And we definitely encourage everyone to apply. Everyone does have a chance at this funding for this program. And as Dr. Jahns said, we definitely want to continue to urge you to always continue to look back at the RFA and for that information. And if your application directly connects with the information that is asked for in the application and it hits the targets for what we're looking for in the program, everyone has a chance. We'll just say it like that. Everyone has a chance. The next question is, do schools we want to work with need to be selected and named in the proposal, or can the schools be selected later as part of the grant project if awarded?
I would suggest the schools, you need to have a good rationale for, it is best to have the schools identified. If you cannot, then having letters of recommendation from, I don't know, superintendents of schools, anyone that can verify that these are the communities you'll be working with, the schools or the institutions, would be helpful.
And I think that somewhat kind of answered this next question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it as well. Regarding eligibility, do partnerships have to be pre-existing?
We realize that there's a development process in each project that you create. However, it is good that we want to see that there's kind of a bottom-up development of this project. So it is ideal or necessary to have community input or your stakeholder input before developing this project. And so having letters of support is important, but you do not need to identify the exact schools you'll be working with.
The next question is it a reimbursement and we pay first, then we invoice for the reimbursement?
That's a good question. And Ryan, do you know the answer to that?
So as Dr. Jahns was sharing earlier, you will have access to the funds directly that you will be able to invoice our awards management division for. If awarded this program, our awards management division will work directly with you to ensure that whatever funds you may be needing, that you will be able to directly invoice us for the awards that you already have, basically. And so the goal is to make sure that you are able to use the award money that you have been allotted for the program. Next question is, for small farmers, you put, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I'm sorry, Sylvia, would you mind coming off mute and sharing your question?
Or you want me to text?
If you could just text your direct question. I was trying to, I see that you had some, if you could just ask the direct question that you were asking.
I will.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next question. approximately how many applications do you anticipate receiving, or how many have you received for the program in the past? Basically, how competitive is the program?
In the past, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we had a 15% success rate. And
Right.
we don't know how many applications we'll be getting this year. We have had some holiday, unfortunately, come into your writing time. So we're not sure. It will depend upon the number of applications. But in the past, it's varied quite a bit, but the funding line is about 15%.
And while we're waiting for Sylvia to ask her question, if there's anyone who'd like to come off mute at this time, we have about 5 minutes left before the end of our RFA webinar. If anyone would like to come off and ask a question, please feel free to do so at this time. There's one more question in the chat right now. It says, is there any chance of extending the deadline? The current wave of COVID has many folks out. We have a key partner in this situation, which delays our progress, and I'm sure this is affecting other groups who are applying.
Yeah, we understand about COVID. No, unfortunately, there is no chance of extending the deadline. The next iteration of the RFA should be out in October of this year. So it's another venue for you to be able to apply later on if that works for you.
Another question that came in the chat that says, are the requirements for the program only set aside for partnership entities?
Oh, the eligibility? That would be only for the primary, for the submitter. For partner entities, you do not need to, they do not need to meet that eligibility criteria. Spring, was that your question?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Time today.
Can I ask a clarifying question about something that Lisa just said? You mentioned that there was another RFA coming out in October. Is that basically just for the next round of this program? I noticed on the RFA that just came out that there was a due date for 2023 as well. Can you just clarify the timeline of next year's grant?
Absolutely.
Or not the whole timeline, but.
Yeah. It should be released in October. And I say should be because these RFAs have to go through many departments here at NIFA. And unfortunately, we were pushed back a little bit this year and bumped into the holidays. But the expected timeline for next year is going to be towards the end of October with an ending date of mid-December.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions at this time? And to clarify, Sylvia, for your question, it seems like you were kind of asking about if you had to partner with nonprofits. I'm trying to read through the lines here, but you do have the ability to apply for this program as an individual. If you look at our eligibility requirements, the partnership is just awesome for you to be able to engage with other entities as you are putting together your project. And so those partnerships with individuals who work with this type of work in your community can just help better fit any project that you would like to do with under the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program. Are there any other questions about our FASLP program before we close out here?
Ryan, do you know how long it'll take for this webinar to be broadcast?
Unfortunately, I don't know exactly because we have to send it through our compliance to make sure that individuals who may need assistance with closed captioning will have that information. But we're going to try to get it up as soon as possible. But if nothing else, we will have our slides available for everyone to be able to use. And we'll have that up by next week for sure.
Super. All right, everyone. We've hit the top of the hour, and I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. And Ryan and I definitely look forward to reviewing your applications. Ryan, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. I hope that you all have been able to gather some information, get some questions answered, and hopefully are inspired for putting in the work for the application. We look forward to hopefully seeing some of you, your applications come across our desk, and we look forward to engaging with you. But thank you so much for tuning in with us this afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.